The latest Common Core test results show little improvement over last year's scores. Math actually showed more improvement than the English language arts this year, with a 4% rise in proficiency across the state. Opponents say that is not enough to merit good news. Joining me now to talk more about these standards is John Ewing. He is the president for Math for America, a nonprofit that is aimed at improving math education all across the country. Mr. Ewing, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I do want to talk about a little bit about the Common Core. You, in your writings, have suggested that people are getting, and this is my word, a little hysterical when they start denouncing the Common Core, and that standards that raise the proficiency, particularly when it comes to the way that students think about math, that they conceptualize it, actually can be very positive.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what the Common Core standards are, and in fact what standards are in particular. But the Common Core standards actually come in two pieces. One is a very short document called the 8 Mathematical Practices, which describe the kinds of ways in which students really should be learning mathematics. That is, not by rote, but real understanding, recognizing patterns, learning to make arguments, learning to criticize the arguments of other people. That's a really important part, and it's the part of the standards that sort of gives guidelines to teachers about what it means to really learn mathematics. And I don't think you'd find a professional mathematician in the country who didn't recognize that as being a genuine way to describe what real learning is in mathematics. So that's part. The other part is just what people think of as the standards, but there's just a lot of people confuse that with what they think of as a curriculum. And to show you how silly that is, you know, if you look at the standards, say, for any of the lower grades, like first grade or second grade or third grade, that the whole thing fits on 3 or at most 4 pages with a lot of white space in between. That's certainly not a curriculum for a full year. These are just guidelines. It's got a framework around which you build a real curriculum. And the reason I say that is that gives teachers a huge amount of freedom to kind of build that curriculum, teachers and schools. So it's not prescriptive, but it does give a very nice, solid framework. And again, in plain language that's free of education jargon. And so those two things fit together. The whole document is 96 pages. That's the math standards.
Yeah, that's actually not
so
quite, that's not long. That's not long at all. But when you bring up the question of freedom and the question of giving latitude to teachers and schools, that seems actually to be almost a problem. And you've written about this too, in so much as these educators, some of them are being asked to perform, to teach mathematics way above their own level.
Well, that's true, although I wouldn't say it's the mathematics that's above their level. And I would also say that in middle and high school, this is just not a problem. I think middle and high school teachers, sure, some of them have to work hard to figure out how to do what's being asked, but that's really not a problem for most teachers in most places.
Okay.
At the elementary level, there is a problem because it's not that the mathematics is very high level, but it's the way of thinking about mathematics. It's a new way of thinking. It's sort of thinking about some things in more nuanced ways. And elementary teachers who are generalists, that's the way we've set up our education system.
Yeah.
They're not specialists in mathematics. They will need some help to figure out how to do these things. And my guess is that as we move forward, we'll see more and more specialists in elementary school who are helping the teachers with the math, eventually with the science part of things. So that they can make this change.
So do you think then that these standards, that the 96 pages, pardon me, that are dedicated to math, as you determine, as you said, laid out there, is that actually going to help eventually in raising the proficiency in mathematics among students in New York?
Well, I think it's going to help across the country. So, I mean, here are the two great things. The greatest thing about the Common Core standards is the word common. They're standards. The aim isn't to raise or lower or change anything. Frankly, most of that's done in the curriculum. But the common part means, first, that students and teachers, by the way, can move from place to place in the country. That's a huge, huge advantage here. We now have kids who come into New York, say, who've been living out in California, who've had a completely different curriculum. In mathematics, where things are vertically organized, that's a real problem. So that part's a big help. But the actual bigger help is that because they're common, it's now the case, if once this gets implemented, it's the case that if you're teaching high school or middle school, you know what your kids have seen in elementary school.
Yeah.
That's not true now. And if you're in elementary school, you know what the kids have got to know in middle school. And again, that's not true. So that teachers, especially the best teachers, really want to know how the whole curriculum fits together. This is called the progressions part of the standards.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I do want to get to this part because it dovetails nicely, actually, into what your organization does, and actually, I believe, is still partnering with the state, and that's this master's teacher program. Master's teachers would be teachers that get incentivized to mentor other teachers to help them along. We have over 300 of them here in New York at this point. And is that your, because it's the implementation of this curriculum, the rollout as we refer to it, that's really been problematic. And now we have this 2-year pause, et cetera, on high stakes decisions, quote unquote, related to test scores from the Common Core. Do you believe that the Master's Teachers Program eventually could contribute to helping straighten out the problems that the rollout created?
Let's see. First, I will just gently disagree with you that of course, politically, there have been lots of problems with the rollout, but I think that the rollout itself hasn't been a problem. It's that people had unrealistic expectations about how you rolled out a program that involves a 13-year-long curriculum, that you can't roll that out in 6 months and see some huge change. Education always takes time to change, and especially a curriculum that's 13 years long is clearly going to take a long time. So I think it's the expectations were completely unrealistic. But yes, I think having really expert teachers around to help, not just mentoring is a great part of it, to mentor both young teachers and also prospective teachers. But I think also to serve on advisory boards, to help provide advice, to give good advice about how things can change and what needs to be done. I think that can make a huge difference. Here, the state now has a master teacher program that has 300 teachers, soon to be probably 500 or 600. Math for America itself in New York City also has another program that's about 800 teachers, or will be about 800 teachers this fall. So this is growing pretty rapidly, and New York is really in a great position. I think the master teacher idea sort of turns everything on its head. Most education reform starts with the parts of education that are broken and tries to fix them. The master teacher idea is that you start with the parts of the system that actually work. The best teachers that you can find, in this case in math and science, you bring them into a community, you put them together, working together. They do their own professional development. They create it, they deliver it, they just do what professionals are supposed to do. And, and part of that has been working on the Common Core, and our own teachers have been actively engaged in it in lots of different ways.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. I'm sorry to cut you off, but this is obviously an ongoing conversation, and I appreciate your voice in the conversation, and hopefully we will have you back, Mr. Ewing. I thank you very much.
Sure. Thanks very much. Yeah.